G'day folks, welcome to this report of the second wave of the invasion phase from the first day on the 6th of June. So, I played through this morning and let me run you through what has happened. Before I do so, I've been meaning to explain how the air points work. Basically, during a certain phase, early in each turn, each side will allocate their air points to basically air superiority or ground support interdiction. The Germans have no air units available on the first turn. They're kind of caught by surprise, so they're not ready. The Allies have to allocate 25 units to air superiority. Now, these aren't actually doing anything, I think. They just basically have to be allocated there. So I've basically taken the units with the highest air superiority rating up in the top right there. And yeah, that saves, my rationale here is this saves my higher hitting interdiction and ground support units for interdiction and ground support. Yeah, numbers in the top right are air superiority, top left are ground support interdiction. That then leaves me with the rest of these units, and we really are paying attention to this table here for air interdiction. This leaves a heap of basically all these allied air units to divide between interdiction and ground support. My thinking early in the turn was that I wanted to save some of these big hard-hitting units for ground support, thinking that maybe they could be used for ground support, thinking that maybe I'll be able to crack open a beach and open the beach and enable these units to provide support. That's not quite working out, really struggling with demolition and gaps blown, but that was my plan at the start. So I've kind of reserved all these units for ground support, and I allocated 50 ground support points for interdiction. On the first turn, this is doubled, so I have 100 points of interdiction, which gives me the minimum needed to basically increase German off-map movement, reduce their strategic movement allowance, but mainly reduce their supply lines by 5 hexes. This is what I was looking at. In subsequent turns, the higher values will become more important as the Germans do more off-map movement and more strategic movement. But for now, the main thing was getting that reduced supply line, which is going to maybe make it difficult for them. So that's all pretty much, yeah, it's not a big decision to make on the first turn. I probably should have spent more units. I could have spent more units on interdiction, but it wouldn't have that much of a more effect. Even going up from 100 to 160, what happens? Well, +1 to the off-map movement roll and 1 extra movement reduction for Class B units. Oh, sorry, 2 more and 1 more for Class A. Not a great deal, whereas the supply lines remain the same. So that's how air units work. What has been happening on the beaches? Well, let's start with Sword Beach. Despite blowing some early gaps in the centre, we have struggled with our demolition engineers and demolition points. We only have 2 gaps blown across this entire beach. And I think that's a symptom. That seems to be, well, I think below average, but expected of Sword Beach. They have their big 4 demolition engineers arriving with the 3rd wave. So I anticipate this will start to increase with that 3rd wave. The special aspect of Sword Beach is the arrival of these commandos in 4 battalions. This is again the sort of errata special rules. It's very unusual. And because of this early gap, they have been able to advance. Again, only 1 hex per turn, but advance nonetheless. I failed my unpinning roll here, so there's a lot of pinned stacks, but the commandos have been moving up and doing reasonably well. I failed both assaults out here on the left. I suffered a step loss out here. This is very costly because these commandos reduced from 6 down to 3, and I was very upset about that. This second attack was inconsequential. So Sword Beach certainly punched wide open. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4 hex gap We can't attack across cliffs, so these units will have to come around. We also suffered a step loss by the commandos here in their attack on this resistance nest. Yeah, so not a lot of combat success, but I think a lot of these sort of resistance nest losses are coming from the naval bombardment. Incidentally, this turn, because we already had that gap on Sword Beach, I focused my naval bombardment out here on Gold and Juno. And on both beaches, they've punched, I barely say punched, poked very small holes on the left side of the beaches. So there's a gap in front of Nan Red out here. You can see two areas have been opened up. And I've been able to get some healthy stacks through. Importantly here, I also rolled for Brigadier Foster's unpinning. He rolled a 2 or less, this guy failed. He rolled a 2 or less, which unpins all stacks in or adjacent to his location. That is pretty important. As this big third wave approaches, I'm going to have a lot of infantry available. And the Germans are only going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I've only got 4 stacks. So they'll get 4 attempts to pin my stacks, but hopefully a few of those fail. Just basically roll the dice and hope for the best. Same story pretty much out on Gold Beach. I pushed a tiny little hole on the far left. It's not a great gap because we've got these batteries behind. I've shifted some of my assault DDs that swam ashore through that gap, and I have a decent stack here. There's 2 DDs there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unfortunately, a lot of pinned units out in this beach, and I've been, in fact, voluntarily pinning a lot of these units to enable them to not attack. So if a unit is unpinned, they must attack every adjacent. So basically, if this were the case at the end of the third wave, this stack would have to split in 2, with some going this way and some attacking this way. And this tank, I don't know what it's doing. I think they attacked, but there was no result. They also have to attack this unit here. These guys are pinned, so they don't have to attack, so nobody has to attack this stack here. This, German strong point here. But, in terms of gaps blown, you can see not a great story on Juno Beach, just three gaps blown in total. A little bit better out on Gold Beach. They're aiming for 20, and there are 7 gaps along the way. Look, 4 big waves arriving. Fingers crossed that some of them arrive in good shape. Omaha Beach is actually looking pretty good, particularly with their demolition points. So we've got 6, 10, 13 demolition points after just 2 waves. That's pretty good, I think. On the beach, we have a nice 4 hex gap, 1, 2, 3, 4 that we've blown. We have some healthy stacks moving through. Even at a point where, these guys landed on Fox Green and just advancing with no enemy to attack. Same story, having to forcefully pin some units to prevent them from having to attack. Unfortunately, failing with my unpinning rolls in both cases with my 2 remaining leaders. So I've got a small stack here. Now they'll suffer from German small arms fire before they get the opportunity to move. These guys, however, whatever happens, they can move in here and hopefully attack that resistance nest location. 2 resistance nests, and we'll have at least 1, 3, 4, 5. So it'll be 5 on 2, plus the armor shift. Or will they even get it? It might be difficult. So I think I'm going to spend a lot of my artillery bombardment on that hex. I might just focus on these 2 hexes and just throw everything at it. I have suffered some. This is naval losses from across the 5 beaches, obviously targeting the big battleships and cruisers and monitors first. It's not nice. Some of these are really big, powerful, hard hitters. Yeah, it's sad, but they have also been dedicating some fire to taking out the coastal batteries as well. Here is the situation out on Utah, and it's going very nicely. 3 hex gap, minimal casualties out here. Everything's going very nicely. A lot of unpinned units. We're getting basically full stacks attacking the Germans. So they wiped out. What happened here? I think there may have been another resistance nest on top of here. Course to hit, removed that. They're down to 1. Eliminated this point here. Didn't advance. The reason for this is if I would have advanced, I would have been subject to small arms fire next turn. By staying where I am, small arms fire happens, and then I can move in, and then I can attack. So there are circumstances where you don't want to advance. Airborne not doing anything yet. This is just the naval invasion sequence of play. They play minimal role, and of course the only German sort of action here is that small arms fire from basically all of those static units situated along the beaches. So, good story from Utah. Happy with how things are going. Encouraging news from Omaha. Happy with that broad gap and some healthy stacks moving their way off the beaches. And good demolition. I didn't mention demolition here on Utah. It is 5 of 10. So with some good rolls, this will be open by the end of that third wave. And we have, of course, some nice, juicy demolition engineers arriving. So, and they just arrived straight on. So I would guess that would be open, and we'll have some full battalions arriving. It may take long. It's definitely going to take longer at Omaha, but doing really well. It's interesting. I mean, I'm more worried about the situation here at Gold than I'm anywhere else. A lot of just reduced stacks, inability to attack, just the one gap, and they're subject to potentially 2 different small arms fire. It's a bit scary. I really am relying on these big 4 stacks arriving. The fact that the gap is out on the left here, the left of Juno, makes it difficult to support. So look, guys, that's the story. Stay tuned, and there'll be more to come soon.